Good evening, everybody, or good afternoon, depending which coast you're on. Amanda and I are from LA, so it is good afternoon. And I know on the East Coast, where Ken is coming to us from, it is good evening, I believe, right?
Yep, it's seven o'clock. I've lost track of time completely. Date, time, hour, second. I have no idea anymore. So it's dark outside. That's all I know. So
Is it dark already? Okay.
yeah, it's dark already.
As always, we're going to give it a few minutes. We'll start right on the dot at 4 Eastern time. And I'm just going to take a quick peek into the chats here. Hello, Gail. Hi, welcome back. Orlando, hello. Joe. Manuel from Fort Lauderdale, hello. Good to see my home state peeps on here. Russ, hello. And as always, this is being recorded. Don't worry if you cannot hear, cannot see. We'll get you a follow-up link to the copy in a day or so. And as always, feel free to type your questions in the questions box. As I'm seeing everybody saying hello right now, that is the same area where you should be typing in your questions throughout the webinar, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Or if it's a question pertaining to a specific image or topic that our speaker tonight, Ken, is talking about, we will try to jump in there. Hello, Greg. Hello.
Just so I ask, make sure everybody can hear me on my mic. New computer, so just making sure everything's set up correctly.
Can hear you very clear.
Yeah, they should see the beauty of landscape first slide as well.
Yes.
Hopefully.
And I see your thumbnails too on the side.
Yes, on the side.
And if you if you put your cursor all the way to the edge.
I will do. Yes, that's one thing I gotta remember to do.
I know, everybody.
It's one of those little things that everybody's like, the cursor. Like, oh, okay.
Yep. Hello, everybody. Hello, Steve. Hello, Linda, Lynn, Eric, Alan, James, Jody. Hello, hello, Bob, Greg. Hello. Thank you. Minnesota.
The D850. It's a great body. It's been a while since I took that. I got to dust it off and I think use it this weekend. My old 850. Been using the Sony so much.
Oh, hello, Lisa. Welcome back from Claremont. Choking on pollen. I'm sorry to hear that. But I'm sure some people are buried in snow right now too.
It finally warmed up here on Long Island, so we're starting to melt away a little bit. So not too bad. It was like every 2 days, it was either ice, snow, rain, ice, snow, rain for like 2.5 weeks straight. So.
Hello from Ossining, New York. Do you know where that's at, Ken?
Where?
Do you know where Ossining, New York is? I have no idea.
Upstate. I was just up near Ossining. Yep. I was along the Hudson, around Croton and Ossining, chasing birds of prey, hawks, bald eagles. Yeah, a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
Because that's what you do.
Well, welcome again, everybody. We're going to get started. Welcome to this is our final webinar, tech webinar for this year, unless there's something I don't know, Ken, but from what I understand.
I wouldn't say the last for the year.
Okay. So. for a minute, right?
For a period of time. So. And just for you, Janet and Armando, if there's something that happens technical wise that I can't see on my end, I do have my phone here. You could just text me and say, hey, you dropped out or something like that.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Well, without further delay, everybody, we are just going to hop right into it. Thank you for joining us tonight. This will be with Ken Hubbard, the man, the myth, the legend behind all these webinars.
Sure, no pressure now.
And coming to us with his talk on beauty of landscapes. Hope you guys enjoy it. As always, type your questions up and we'll get to as many as we can. Enjoy, and we'll see you at the end.
All right. See you guys soon.
Yep.
All right. I want to thank everybody for coming, and I hope you enjoy this webinar. Definitely, if you do have questions, type them in the questions box. Armando and Janet will be answering them, and if anything's important, they'll keep some to the end, like ones that they might not be able to answer if they're very specific to an image that I have. So ask questions away. My name's Ken Hubbard. I am the field service manager for Tamron USA. I've been with them officially 20 years this past January. So I've been with them a long time, which has allowed me to travel to some great places. And I'm going to give this presentation based on my thought process. I've done a number of workshops where people have asked me to vocalize everything that's going on in my head as I'm setting up for a shot. And at first I was like, wow, that's a lot more difficult than I would think it would be, because you normally don't speak out loud when you're observing a location or a shot or anything like that. But it turned out to be a unique way to communicate with people. So I set up this webinar to be the start to finish process of when I first think about going to a location like this. This is Diamond Beach in Iceland. What my thought process, what I'm thinking about, what I do to prepare myself to go, what I do to pack, all that. So some of the things I'm going to be talking about in this presentation is doing your research. Extremely important. Knowing as much as you possibly can before you go to that location. And when you get to know that location, part of that research is knowing that location. Once you've gotten all the details that you think you can gather from where you're going, then you start filling your bag. What do you do? What kind of lenses you take? What camera bodies you're taking? What extras are you taking? What accessories? What are you going to need? It's all part of the process. It's never just, okay, pack up a bag and then go. Once you get to that location, use your eyes before using your camera. Understand where you are. Appreciate where you are. All right, hold on one second. Check your cursor. Okay, I will. There you go. Thank you, Armando. That cursor flying away. It disappears from my screen, so I do apologize if I accidentally leave that cursor on an image. Use your eyes. So understand where you are, appreciate where you are. It will help you create better images. Optics and choosing focal lengths, extremely important. I don't just go willy-nilly saying, oh, I'm just going to use this lens today. It really is important where I am and what type of lenses I'm going to be using. Camera settings, of course, I'm going to go through camera settings, what I use, what my thought process is when I'm taking an image. Looking at light, color, and time. All that is extremely important. Constructing your image as well, right before you're about to take it. What are all those elements that you're looking at for the scene in front of you? And when it comes down to it, I'm going to give a lot of information in a pretty short period of time here. We got about an hour or so to talk about this. So it's a lot of information, and it ultimately comes down to don't think too much, just do it sometimes. Trust yourself, trust that you have it all somewhere in your head. So doing your research, this is the first thing I do, is go to my computer. And when I go to my computer, I start looking at, if I'm going to a national park or some place that may have a gated situation or may have limited hours, I want to make sure I have those hours and I know the accessibility. Some national parks are 24 hours, some are not. You go to Smoky Mountain National Park and you want to go in through Townsend, I believe is the closest town there, to the Caves Cove area. That gate doesn't open till sunrise, not before sunrise, till sunrise. And us photographers, especially landscape photographers, love to be there beforehand. So, you know, knowing the accessibility to it, also knowing the accessibility to the spots that you are going. There's constantly closures for whatever reason. Say there's a mudslide or there's a lot of rain or snow or something like that. Go to those sites, understanding what's open and what's not. Don't leave it to get there and then get disappointed once you're there. Understand parking, extremely important. One of the things I do as well, once I know where I'm going, I also go to the web and I'll do like a Google Earth overview, satellite view of the area that I'm going to, so I can actually see it, see where parking is. I remember going to Canyonlands for the first time. There's some incredible vistas in Canyonlands, but the pullouts can be far and few between. So you could be driving along thinking this is a great location, but a half a mile down the road is actually where you have to park for it. So try to get that all worked out. I keep a little black notebook that when I'm going on a trip, I start listing everything out. Understand the tripod rules. A lot of parks, especially parks that have trails that you might be going on, they're starting to get a little bit more restrictive, especially Zion is one of the more restricted when it comes to trails. They don't want using tripods now. Light painting is another one. If you're a night photographer, more and more parks are starting to cut out light painting because they feel it disrupts the other people there. So these are all things that you need to do, the research that you need to do. Other things I do is look up photos. I'll say photos of Yellowstone National Park or Yosemite National Park, wherever it may be, and I want to see what other people have done. Where are the good locations? Visually see it before I go. Review any maps to help you know where those locations are. Know your distances, especially if you have to hike in. There's one great spot called Observation Point in Zion National Park where there's two ways to get there, two trails. You can take the Weeping Rock Trail, which will probably take you 3 to 4 hours because it's nothing but switchbacks up and up and up and up and up, around and up and up and up again. Or you can go to the east side of the park and come in from there, which is a little bit more flat and probably can do it in about an hour, hour and a half. So know your distances of where you're going. You don't want to beat yourself up too much before you even take a picture. And know the right seasons to go. And that's where looking up photos really helps as well. You may think you want to go to that national park in summer because you want that beautiful sunrise, but it turns out maybe winter's even more beautiful in the place that you want to go. Knowing your location. So you did that research, you did all the knowing, okay, the parking's really good here, really bad there, the hours, everything, you have that all down. Now it's understanding the sun times, sunrises and sunsets by the season. Where, when is it gonna rise, when is it gonna set? But also understand if you're going to a mountainous region, that even though sunrise may say 6:45 a.m., that's when it's the horizon behind the mountains. When does it actually rise above those mountains? So, and there's apps that you can get, which I'll talk about later, that will help you really fine tune those sunrise sunset times, because that's the worst thing, especially a sunset. If you planned on a sunset at 7:30 p.m. and you get there at 7:15 p.m. and it's already behind the mountains or something like that, it's really a bummer. Moon phases, extremely important as well if you're into night photography, night landscape photography. If you go on a full moon night and you plan on going out at 2 a.m. to shoot the Milky Way, but the full moon is out, you're not going to really be able to get the Milky Way all that well because it's going to be washed out by the brightness of the sun. So get all this information down so you can plan the perfect time to go. Also, sun directions, I forgot about that. And I purposely used this image for that. And Armando, who's here tonight, remembers this image. This is in Canyonlands. We were driving in a van, and Andre, myself, and Armando are in the Tamron van, and I'm driving, and they're like, we got to pull over because the sun broke out through the clouds, created this incredible light. All I remember those two is jumping out as the van is still rolling, and I'm stuck in the van trying to find a parking spot. So, but understanding sun directions, and this is kind of a weird one that some people don't think about. Is the location you're going to a western facing mountain or an eastern facing mountain. It's going to dictate what it's better for, if it's better for sunrises or sunsets. The reason why I chose this one, because it's Canyonlands, and in Canyonlands you're above the rim, you're on top of the valley below. So it actually is a two-directional park. This is at sunset one day, and this is at sunset another day, facing the opposite direction. So some parks are great for both directions of shooting. Some, say the Grand Tetons, lend themselves a little bit better for sunrise because the sun is coming up behind you from the east, hitting the face of the mountains, and then at sunset sets behind it. Not saying that you can't get good images at sunset, but tends to lend itself a little bit more for that sunrise. So knowing those sun directions and the location you're at, where it's coming from. Now, those things that help you figure all this stuff out once you're in the park as well, or the location you're going to for the landscapes: PhotoPills, Wonderground, and SkyGuide. PhotoPills is sort of my go-to all the time. When I'm in a location and I'm scouting during the day, it has an augmented reality program that allows the program to use the camera of your phone. So you can point it up to the landscape that you're looking at, and it'll overlay the sun, or the guide of the sun during the day, from sunrise all the way through sunset into the blue hour, and tell you where the sun is in comparison to where you're standing. So if you're, say, in Saguaro National Park and you want to put a sunburst behind one particular cactus, you can take PhotoPills and use augmented reality for the sun, and you can say, okay, exactly at 5:15, it's going to be right in between those two arms of the cactus. Perfect. So you can actually really fine tune when you need to be where, because of the sun direction and the sun location of where it is in the sky. Wonderground is my weather app I use. I know there's some people that use these very intricate weather apps. I just simply use Wonderground because it's been fairly accurate. And I just want to know what the weather's going to be, when a storm might end, when sunrise, sunset is, what's the cloud cover going to be. It tells me enough information that I can predict fairly well once I'm at my location, if it's worth going out or not going out, or if it's going to be bad. SkyGuide is my night app, so when I want to know where the Milky Way is going to be, or what constellations are going to be in the sky, that's my go-to, is SkyGuide. And I use an iPhone, so there's other Android ones. So now, filling your bag, that's the key. That always people ask, so what camera lenses do you want to bring? And one of the things is, it's really nice now with mirrorless systems, because one thing people say, I'm getting older, I just want things to be lighter and stuff like that. Yep, I do too. I like that, and I like the fact that the mirrorless systems allow for a much smaller package. But whatever camera, when it comes to cameras, whatever works for you, whatever you're comfortable with, and that's the key, being comfortable with that camera. I know a lot of people always ask, okay, what manufacturer do you use? It really doesn't matter what I use, because I use a camera system that I'm comfortable with. The menus, I like the way it feels in my hand, and that should be for everybody, the way it goes. So the camera is one thing, but the lenses are another, because you want to bring what's best for the job that you're doing, or the location that you're going to. Is it a wide angle location where your 15 to 30 Tamron's going to work better than a telephoto 70 to 200? I will tell you, for the lenses, for me right now, wherever I go, for the Sony system with the Tamron lenses, the 17 to 28, I always bring a wide, ultra wide to wide angle, 28 to 75, wide angle to normal, and then the other one I bring is a 28 to 200 all in one. It gives me a little bit of that reach that I'm looking for, and a 35 millimeter for that close-up 1 to 2 macro. So those 4 lenses tend to be the ones that I use the most. But again, it's what you like to shoot. Some people are more wide angle, some are more telephoto, but don't just go saying, I'm going to bring the, this lens, and what I get is what I'm going to get. Really think about it. Think about, after doing all that research that you did, What's going to work best? Filters, circular polarizers, and neutral densities go with me wherever I'm going. Tripod, good sturdy tripod, goes with me wherever I'm going. A flash and a flashlight as well, and all the other accessories, shutter release, media, battery, sensor cleaner, comfortable strap, all that stuff still go. So when all is said and done, I still have my 35mm system where the bag normally ranged about 35 pounds. Now I'm down to about 25 pounds. So it's getting a little bit better, but still kind of heavy. I'm a person that likes to have everything I need when I go to a location. As much as I use Photoshop, I do not go by the saying of, oh, I'll fix it in Photoshop. I'd rather do it correctly in the field and have everything with me. So camera bodies, like I said, having the right camera body or what's comfortable for you. When I say the right camera body, that means for you. Lenses, it's for the appropriate situation. If it's night skies, you're going to want that wide angle and you're going to want a faster lens. And I'm going to go into all this stuff as we get into the meat of this presentation. But understanding that the reason why you want ultra wide for night skies is because you want to get as much as that sky. Why do you need it fast? Because there's very little light. So you need a f2.8 or better, so you don't have those really, really long shutter speeds where now the stars are no longer pinpoints, they become streaks in the sky. So picking the right lens for the situation, extremely important. Filters, this is 11 o'clock at Ricketts Glen in Pennsylvania. And I was shooting at a 20-second exposure. Why? Because I brought my neutral density filters with me and I was able to put a really dark one, a really dense one on there to slow down my shutter speed to 20 seconds so I get that really, really soft, nice wispy water everywhere. Even in the slow parts of the water, it's still nice and soft. So having that right equipment, extremely important. Also, there's a circular polarizer, sorry about that, but a circular polarizer on here as well, because a lot of people don't think about waterfalls. What do they produce besides pretty pictures? They produce mist. Mist on rocks, especially on bright, bright days, create a lot of glare. So more often than not, when it comes to shooting waterfalls, besides having a neutral density filter on there during the day, I have a circular polarizer on there as well to take off the glare on the rocks so they get richer. They're not washed out by the glare of a really bright cloudy day or the sun. Tripods and accessories. Don't only just look at those really big landscapes, especially when you're doing close-ups. A good steady tripod is going to make your day. Keep those images nice and sharp and always have the right accessories with you. I relate photography to golf. There's always another piece of equipment to purchase that you absolutely need. It's like, the bad thing working for Tamron for 20 years is that I've been to hundreds and hundreds of camera stores over those years, and every time I go into one, I find something I absolutely have to have. So people think, oh, it must be great, good money in photography, stuff like, yeah, that's great, but I spend it all in camera stores. So, but that's the fun of it too. There's always something new to try and fun to try out. So now, you've done your research, you know all there is to know about the location, you mapped it out, you figured out where you wanted to go, you looked at pictures people have taken, you've packed your bag for the situation, for the trip you're going on or the location you're going to. Now you get there. Once you get there, use your eyes before using your camera. Take it all in. This is Salar de Uyuni in Bolivia, and it is an incredibly stunning place. If it's not the largest, it's one of the largest salt flats in the world. And from, I believe, February till late April, they get all these thunderstorms that you can see here, and it floods the salt flats to like a foot, 16, 18 inches, enough that you can drive on it and walk on it and walk around it, but it is so big and so flat, it's incredibly surreal. It's it's really, really difficult to get your bearings. So you can't just take out your camera and start firing. I must have just stood there and turned 360 degrees 4, 5, 6, 7 times, just looking at all those details, looking at what I can create an image from, because there was just so much. If I just started shooting away, they would have been really, really haphazard images. So I started dissecting my scenes first before even looking at the camera. Then I start to build my composition, looking what the elements I have. This is on a beach in Norway at about 2 o'clock in the morning. That's the moon rising behind the clouds there. And as we're walking down the beach, I saw this beautiful S-curve in the water, the backlit clouds with the moon giving this really orangey color. And what I really, really loved is this very small detail, making sure I built my composition so I kept that little building in the scene. I wanted to keep that. I didn't want to edit that out. It was kind of this obscure little part of humanity in this really desolate sort of scene. I kind of like that. So start building your composition before taking that first picture and look a little bit closer. I usually, when I give this presentation live, I usually ask, okay, does anybody know where this is? And nobody gets it. It's actually, if you can say in your head or say it out loud or throw it in the questions box. So I'm going to ask you guys, where do you think this is? Chances are, if you haven't seen one of my webinars or seminars, you're not going to get it right. I'm sorry. But this is actually Bryce Canyon. And it is from the ledge. I believe it's from Sunrise Point is where we were. And it was, lack of better words, a really poor morning for photography. This cloud was causing just such bad light on Bryce, the amphitheater itself, that I ended up taking out my 28-300 at the time and zooming in 300 millimeters to the valley and the hills way, way off in the distance. Nowhere near a part of Bryce Canyon, but it was just this little segment off in the distance, and using that telephoto lens kind of stacked up those mountaintops together, and the haze in between them created this little bit of separation in them. Ended up being the best picture I took that morning, just because the light of the canyon itself was really, really bad. So look closer. Don't just look at the obvious of where you think you want to take the picture of. Look at closer details. It may be far away. It may be right at your feet. You never know. Optics and choosing the right focal length. This is a great one. So a lot of people have said that, oh, my favorite lens is a 24-70 or the 28-75. And I sit there and I go, well, yeah, I would say the lens that I end up using the most is either 28-75 on the Sony or the 24-75 for my full frame DSLR. That's where I see, that's my kind of comfort zone. But I still choose the correct focal length if I need to do something else. I don't just rely on that all the time, because it doesn't always work out what you're looking for. And if you haven't realized at this point, every single lens, every single image has the lens on the bottom right hand corner of the screen. You can see it down there, what I use. And there's a good point to figure out why I might have used that. There are some times where the location dictates the lens you're going to use, and this is one of them. This is Horseshoe Bend outside the town of Page. And this location is so wide because you're so close to that edge, and it's just this really gigantic horseshoe that 15 millimeters, I wish I actually had maybe 14 or maybe even a hair wider if that was possible, because I want more of the sides there. But that's what I'm saying. In this case, the scene dictates what focal length I'm using. If I tried to use 24 in here, I would have cropped too much of the sides and it wouldn't have that as much of that dramatic effect. And if you have a place, even if it's close to you, and you thought you were always going there at the right time, this is sort of a sidebar story. And this is, I always went to Page, Arizona, and Antelope Canyon is there. And the main reason I always went in the morning was to get to Antelope Canyon early, so it would be less crowded and all that. And then I would go over to, you know, Horseshoe Bend either afterwards or before for sunrise, and then head over to Antelope Canyon. And that's what I always did until one day I was sitting having lunch there, and somebody said, why do you go in the morning? It's so much better at sunset. It's just, it really is a better sunset location. That afternoon stayed, went there, and this what resulted. And I will have to say, for me, yeah, Horseshoe Bend definitely is a better sunset. You can stop down that aperture, close it down to f16 or so, and get that beautiful sunburst as it's just setting into western horizon there. Then there's other locations. This is Red Rock Crossing in Sedona, Arizona, where you think, because you got this really nice leading line of the stream here, and you got some nice reflections in the water, that you want to go ultra wide. You kind of want to bring all that stuff in. But this rock formation back here is called Cathedral Rock. And to me, that is the focus of this image. And at 15 millimeters, what happens? Wide angle lenses, your foreground becomes bigger, more exaggerated, your background becomes smaller and more stretched out. So whatever's in the background becomes less of a focal point because it's just smaller. My focal point here is I'm kind of getting stuck on this reflection here. The reflection shouldn't be the main focal point. It should, your eye should end up over here. So at 15 millimeters, because it's so wide, it's stretching it out and making it so small. But with just a tiny little change to that focal length, using the 15 to 30 going to 26 millimeters, much, much better. Now you have a little bit more dramatic of an image. Just changing it by 11 millimeters brought in a little bit more compression, so it brought the Cathedral Rock back here forward, and the reflection I also got a little bit lower, so I got a little bit more reflection in there. Brought them closer together, got rid of that extra stuff that was just, let me go back to it if I can. There you go. Here, this is just too much stuff. Your eyes get lost in here, your focus point gets lost both left and right side, not necessary. So go to 26 millimeters, gets rid of all that, and now you have your focus point. And that's what's different. Changing focal lengths at the wide end is much more dramatic than the telephoto end. You can go from 200 to 300 millimeters and not see that major of a difference. There'll be a difference, but not as drastic of a difference going 11 millimeters at the wide angle. It's just every millimeter change at the wide brings a much more dramatic change to the field of view and how your image will look. So 11 millimeters difference, totally different image to me. Then going even further, going more telephoto. This is a case where I'm in Arches National Park and we're taking a picture of balanced rock. A lot of people, what most people do is they park in the parking lot at balanced rock, they walk up to the rock, they use a wide angle lens because it's a big rock, and they shoot upwards. The first thing that they notice in their images is the rock formations now are doing this. They're converging inward, and that's because you're taking a wide angle lens and shooting it upward. That's what happens. You get convergence with that. So what we do is we park in that parking lot, but we go across the street and we end up using a more telephoto lens. And what that does is it takes your angle of shooting from this being close to it and makes it that. It straightens it out because now you're shooting more straight at it. As you walk away, your angle gets lower and lower and lower, so now you don't have that convergence. The second thing it does, where wide angle stretches things out, telephoto compresses, makes things look like they're closer together, this compressed look. And you have turret arch in this bottom left hand corner here. I have bottom left hand corner here. That's turret arch. Again, if I shot this at 24 millimeters, think about Red Rock Crossing and Cathedral Rock, you wouldn't even notice that in the frame. By going to 200 millimeters, now I brought the mountain range in the background as well as turret arch closer to it. It becomes part. It's a sort of a support to the main part of this scene. So focal length is extremely important when I'm thinking about images. But sometimes, again, you shoot with what you have in your hand. This is Apalachicola, and they were doing controlled burns, and we were on a boat going up the Shrem Creek, and we come around this turn directly at the sun, and all this smoke and particulates up in the air, it was glowing this apocalyptic orange. There is very little retouching done as far as color goes in this image. I had my 150 to 600 on me, and mostly because we were shooting bald eagles and ospreys, with the lenses, and so I just started firing in, but it actually worked really well because it kind of compressed and put everything on the same plane. The silhouette of the trees, the clouds, and the sun all look like it's sort of flat and kind of gives a little bit more dramatic of effect. So yeah, there's times where you're stuck having to shoot with whatever you have in your hand, and you get lucky and it works out. Now, camera settings. I know a lot of people always like to know exactly what the settings are for the images. The first set of images, I didn't want that distraction. I didn't want you guys to get obsessed with, okay, what aperture, what ISO, why 5 seconds, why 38 seconds. Now I'm going to get into more of that and the thought process of, now I'm there, I've done my research, I looked at things, I'm picking my focal lengths. Now, where's my starting point for setting up and actually taking the pictures? For me, landscapes, the first thing I think about is aperture. What do I need to do? Do I need a large depth of field for inclusion like here? Because I have a double leading line here. I have this old docking area kind of leading me from the left side into the frame, pretty close to me here. And then I have this wire poles in the background that lead me out of the frame and out of the image. So I need a very large depth of field, and that's where my first thought process with landscapes is always aperture. What do I need? Large depth of field for inclusion, shallow depth of field for isolation. So here, f22, ISO 64. I always try to shoot at the lowest possible ISO setting. I'm on a tripod, so I don't care about how long my shutter is going. And in this case, it's 5 seconds. I actually want it to go into the seconds because there was a little bit of ripple on the bay here in Apalachicola, and it made the scene a little too noisy. So by stopping down the aperture, letting in less light, by bringing my ISO down to 64, less sensitive to light, very easily without it, I don't think I even had a neutral density. I just had a circular polarizer on here, which is about a stop and a half of light, allowed me to get to 5 seconds and just have that shutter speed open long enough that that water just kind of smoothed out, made it a much more calm scene, not so noisy. So that's the thought process of where I'm starting with the aperture. Again, here, this is all about, depths of field again, f16, but I'm handheld this time. So yes, there are times where I do tend to leave my tripod in the car and I just want to walk comfortably. I'm using the 28 to 200 here, just handheld. So f16 for the depth of field, but ISO 640, so I can keep my shutter speed at about a 15th of a second and know, even with VC and image stabilization and all that good stuff, I still want to keep my shutter speed within a nice, comfortable zone where I know I'm going to get a sharp image. So I definitely know I want the f16, so that dictates me to move that ISO to 640 and my shutter speed to 1/15th. So then second is my shutter speed, where before, those scenes, aperture is a super important one. Here it is as well, because I have subjects, the bottom of the rocks of these steps here, these rocks are very close to me, and these waterfalls, the top of the waterfall and the trees behind are far away. So again, first thing I think about is that aperture. I need to stop down. I need to get that larger depth of field. So I control that with the aperture. Then because I'm on a tripod, I'm not worried about how long my shutter speeds are going to be, but I want a long shutter speed because I want this water as soft as possible. And the longer you can make that shutter speed, the softer that water is going to become. So I bring down my ISO to 100, reduce the amount of light that way, circular polarizer and a neutral density filter. I'm up to 20 seconds here. So controlling my shutter speed so I get that soft water. But just pay attention. If this was a really, really, really windy day, that I'm going to get a lot of movement over those 20 seconds in those trees as well. Fortunately for me, it was really calm that day, so 20-second exposure kept everything really, really still as well. Again, shutter speeds, in this case, this is because of light, not so much because of movement. This is light, but movement does play a part in this. I'm not going to really go into night sky photography in this. So this, you can look at these settings: f2.8, ISO 3200, 25 seconds at 15 millimeters. That is my starting point. Every time I go out, I don't even have to think about it anymore unless I'm using a different focal length, if I'm going to more telephoto. But in this case, the ISO 3200 is set because I need that sensor in my camera to be sensitive to light. There's not much out there, so I need to bump it all the way up because I'm maxed out here as opening my aperture at 2.8. I'm as wide as I can go. I can't let in any more light that way. I can't go any longer than 25 seconds because once I go to say 30, in this particular case, 30 seconds, 35 seconds, I was starting to get little ovals in the stars. So 3200, 2.8 allowed me to get that 25 second right in that sweet zone at 15 millimeters to get those pinpointed stars. So sometimes it's about movement, sometimes it's about light with that ISO and that shutter speed. And then talking about ISO, for the most part, you're always going to see my images are going to be shot at the lowest ISO possible that I can shoot with. Do I fluctuate from that? Of course I do. But in this case, I'm in Barbados, a beautiful location, super bright light. I can stop down to f16, bring my ISO all the way down to 100, and I still get a shutter speed of 1/400th of a second. Plenty to freeze that boat. It wasn't moving very fast in the background, and just get a good image that way. The ISO, though, it's a tricky thing. It's great today because digital cameras are so much better at handling it. I don't know, you guys can put this make comments about this in the questions box as well. Has anybody tried using Team Max black and white ISO 3200 film anytime in their lifetime? That was grainy. It was basically for your artsy pictures. That's what you used it for. But today, 3200 with digital cameras is great. So I do not hesitate if I need to change my ISO depending on the shooting situation. But if I know I have enough light or I'm using a tripod and I don't care how long those shutter speeds go, I keep my ISO always as low as possible. In this case, again, going back to that situation, to get the proper exposure and to get those pinpointed stars, I needed that ISO at 3200. So f2.8 again, here you go, same exact setting as last time. Even though there's no Milky Way in this one, f2.8, ISO 3200, 25 seconds again, all set. And in this case, that 3200 allows me to set the aperture and the shutter exactly where I want them. Now, looking at light, color, and time, this is super important. Yeah, it is 100% true. Early morning, late afternoon are the best times for landscapes and all that. I mean, just check my time, see where I'm at. Okay, not too bad. They are. It's the beautiful warm light, nice long shadows if you want that. It's just the perfect time of day to get those dramatic images. Doesn't mean I don't shoot at all times of day. I do. But those are, when it comes to color and light, the two best times for it. But there's also other great times to shoot. The next three shots are the exact same location under three completely different situations. The first morning we went was just nothing but fog, this heavy, heavy, dense fog. for me, having these two boats that are sinking, one sunk and one on its way to being sunk, I kind of like that. It created that mood. That fog to me is one of the best times to go out and shoot, because yes, the light is a little bit on the flat side, but it's also moody. The next day we had a combination of the two where the fog is burning off, and this kayaker, I kind of like that guy. I left him in there. I've had one without him, but I like the one with him in there because he's coming out of the fog. It's kind of cool. But here's a balance between the two. To me, a little bit more dramatic, a little bit of fog in the scene, but in this day, it had burned off just enough that the sun was able to rise. And then here, a completely fogless morning, completely different situation, looking at light and understanding what you're going to create with the light you have. I wish I can say, with all the planning I do, with all the knowledge I try to get, all the apps I have on my phone, you never know when you're going to get there. You just have to take what the scene is going to give you, and make the most of it. So understand that 3 different days, 3 completely different images created. And if you have the time, try to go back to the location and get it at another time. Fire and smoke. You saw before what fire and smoke can do. Pretty dramatic images. Don't get frustrated if you go somewhere and it's very smoky. This is Yosemite National Park. In the morning, all the fog would be down in the valley, but by mid-afternoon, it would all be gone. It was a really weird phenomenon. I guess the way the currents in the air goes up and down there, it literally in the morning looked like that, went back mid-afternoon, looked like that. So, that's why I say always try to return, because the lighting situations, the colors are going to be completely different. And like I said, I tend to shoot all day long, even though some photographers tell you, oh, we're going to shoot in the morning, we're going to shoot in the afternoon, and we'll nap or do a webinar in the middle of the afternoon. I like afternoon, middays for black and white. What I'll end up doing is turning this image, because there's a lot of contrast, there's a lot of dynamic range in here, it'll make a pretty dramatic black and white image. So I shoot all the time. Understanding what happens to light and color, or what happens to color because of light, is important too. The lack of light, what it does to it, the more light, what it does to it, directional light, all that plays a big part of it. This is a Mammoth Hot Springs just before sunrise, literally about 10 minutes before sunrise. We're walking along, and I just wanted to take an example shot what happens just by changing, just by that little bit of pre-sunrise to sunrise. So this is about 10 minutes before. What do you get? You get that bluish overcast, really nice soft light. There's some color in there. And if you've ever been to Mammoth Hot Springs, you're going to be like, that's Mammoth Hot Springs? It's more colorful than that. But you probably saw it in direct sunlight. This is about a minute after the sun rose. And what happens? Boom. It just saturates that color. The warmth of that rising sun gets rid of the blue. You can see the blue in the shadows still, but the color, the sun just makes those colors pop. So if you're having a problem, and the colors look a little washed out, is the scene in a shadow or is it in direct sunlight? What's happening? Direct sunlight, midday sunlight, yes, will start dampening down colors as well, but it won't turn it to that. Dramatic difference from that to that. So in the time of day, I want to do a selection of images, picking that right time of day to shoot what you're looking for. So 3 different parks, but going from the golden hour through blue hour into the night, back to blue hour again, back to golden hour again as well, through 3 different parks. So really understanding when to go and why it's important to go here. It's just about sunset. We're in that somewhat of that golden hour, and this is a good example of what happens at the Tetons. You're facing west and the sun's facing west, so what happens? The sun goes down behind it. So it can be a very difficult park to capture some really good sunset images, especially when there isn't a cloud in the sky. It makes it even more difficult. And you're also going to notice I'm changing my composition and my focal length as well. I never just set up one shot and just start shooting and just say, I'm going to stick to this spot, this focal length, this composition. I'm moving it. So I change it up a little bit. I kind of take away some of that left side. I zoom in a little bit more. But here again, now we're starting to lose that sun. And you still got a little bit of streak, and notice all that blue, all what happens to it in the shades. It just becomes that murky, murky color. But then what's funny is now the sun went down, which would normally start bringing you into more of a blue hour, but this is a really good example of what I'm talking about. It's set behind the Tetons, what I talked about earlier, but it hasn't set the horizon in Idaho yet, because Idaho is on the opposite side of the Tetons here. So you're still getting some of that golden color, and some of these clouds start coming in. Look for that as well. If you start seeing clouds coming in at sunset, there's a good chance that they might start forming. And when that happens, you really can get some beautiful color right as the sun is setting and after the sun is setting. The one thing, the one big mistake you can make is once the sun has set completely, pack up your gear and go. I give myself a good 35, 45, maybe an hour more after sunset and stay there, because you get those pinks, yellows, blues in the sky that really, really pop. Fortunately, we were with a group here that was very patient, and they saw those clouds, and they were treated to a really beautiful sunset, even though just about an hour or two before there wasn't a cloud in the sky and it looked like it was just going to be sort of a bust of a sunset. But you never know what can happen, and with light and time, just be patient. That's the key to it. I know with digital cameras, you know, the instant satisfaction of having a digital camera has made people a little less patient, but you know, we're in a beautiful area. Enjoy it, take it all in, and you know, just wait. Hopefully that good light will happen. So I'm going to move to Zion National Park now for sunset here. This is the Virgin River with the bridge that goes over the Virgin River. The Watchman in the background. This is the classic Zion National Park location. They always have a sign that's there and not there saying you can't stand on the bridge, but an hour before, and this is another one, I would say if you're going to shoot this and you're there at a time where Zion National Park is a little bit busy, get there about an hour before sunset to try and get your spot closer to the middle of that bridge. Because if you're fortunate enough to have some clouds and some moisture in the air, you're going to be treated to one of the best sunset possibles. It comes inside and hits the Watchman from the side and just makes everything glow really nicely. 3 hours later, we went back. So what happened here is, because it's only, say, 2 hours after technically, or 2.5 hours after sunset, the sun is below the horizon, but it's not that far below the horizon just yet that maybe the sky to our eyes looks black, but with a long enough exposure, you're going to get some of that ambient light, and it's going to turn the sky indigo blue. This is a 20-second exposure from the Virgin River. The same, was it the same day? No, it wasn't the same day, but same location. But about 2.5 hours after sunset. But what happens as you get later into the night, and this is the fact that now the sun is moving to the other side of the planet, no more ambient light in the sky, 2.5 hours. Now we're at 2 o'clock in the morning. We are 6, 7, 8 hours after sunset. Sun is gone, no more ambient light. Now with a 25-second exposure, I get a black sky. So you go from that blue hour, blue sky, now we're to that black sky. What happens in the morning again? Get there early enough, a few hours before sunrise, you start getting that ambient light again. And this is about 2 hours, 2.5 hours before sunrise, you get that indigo blue again. For sunrise, we're going to move back to the Tetons because this is a sunrise location for me. We're at the Snake River overpass. I get to my locations early. It may not be good light, and it's definitely really dark, but a lot of times, and with so many people traveling these days, these locations are busy and crowded to say the least. So especially with the internet, there is no secret spots anymore. Once you post something online, people see it. But this is the Snake River. Everybody knows it from Ansel Adams. So I get there an hour and a half before sunrise, set up my location, bring some coffee, hang out, kind of play with the composition a little bit, and just start waiting for the sun to rise. So here we're still in that bluish color. You can see a little bit of pink starting to happen in that sky. But as the sun gets closer to the horizon, it's not up yet, but that's where that color starts coming in. And that's why you get there early, because you can really get some beautiful color getting into that more of that golden hour. And as that sun starts breaking, you can see it. It's hitting the top of Grand Teton over there. I believe that's Grand Teton. Just hitting the top of that. Now those clouds burst into some brightness. There's some really beautiful warm light on the Tetons itself. And now what happens once the sun comes up, literally 10 minutes later, you start losing that color. That's why if you're 10 minutes late to sunrise, makes a huge difference in your image. So then now we're going to talk about, now that you've looked at light, you picked when you want to go, you know the right time, you use those apps to find when sunrise is, when golden hour, when blue hour is, you have that all set. Now you start constructing your images. Let me just time check again. Okay. Isolation, inclusion, lines, patterns, compositional emphasis, color and tone, placement, light and dark relationships, and movement. And again, I'm going to go back here and I'm going to say, try not to think about every single one of these things when setting up an image. Trust yourself. If you took some notes here and you didn't get them all, don't worry. This webinar is recorded. You can watch it 100 times if you want. As many teachers as you go to, as many things you learn from people, don't try to think about all of it as you're taking the images. Trust yourself that it's in there somewhere, but think about it beforehand. Get to know, think about these things. Isolation and inclusion. Again, here I put some more settings on here so you know what I'm doing. 4 seconds, because I want that soft water. Here, this is Childs Park in Pennsylvania, a great little state park there. I believe it's just starting to back open. Got some damage from a really bad snowfall a couple of years ago, but some really nice waterfalls there. And this particular one has that great little S curve, which people love. Viewers love to see in their images of flowing water. If you can get a road scene or park benches or a stream in this S curve, it's really pleasing to the viewer's eyes. So in this case, there's a consistent line of water that you can see, the viewer can see here. So I left the entire waterfall in here from start all the way through, even the small section, you can see some water all the way down and then out the bottom left-hand side. Even though I started in the center, compositionally, I had the stream leaving into the bottom left-hand corner. I didn't want it coming straight at me. Just a little bit more pleasing for the viewer as well. But this is Bridal Veil Falls at Bushkill Falls in Pennsylvania, which it's a cascading waterfall, but it's in segments. So it doesn't really have that nice flow, but it has that really deep, rich black rock. That this soft waterfall falling over this black rock is pretty beautiful in the sense that it doesn't need to be the whole river in this case. So now there's isolation. I'm just isolating to a part of it instead of trying to capture the whole, just using the part I feel is the best. And again, here I have it coming in from middle left side and then heading out the right side as far as composition goes and movement goes. I want it to move from the top left through the middle and then out through the bottom right, and just a section. So inclusion, everything, exclusion, just isolation to a single part. I think I said it earlier, I never just take one image of a scene. Even this one, I broke it into sections, like this section down here, I might have zoomed in and did the section at the top. But ultimately, the best overall, after looking through maybe 20, 25 images that I took just of this one waterfall at different focal lengths and different speeds and stuff like that, I ended up going with this one. Inclusion, probably 10 or 15 images of this ended up being this one. So don't just think after that first shot, you got it. Experiment a little bit. You never know. You may think you nailed it on the first one, but after looking at it a little bit more and dissecting it a little bit more and taking a few more images, the fourth or fifth or even the last one may be the best one out of the bunch. Leading lines. Leading lines could be anything. And this is Redwood National Park up in Northern California. Excuse me for 1 second. And I was just driving through the park. It was later afternoon. You can see how high that sun is up in the sky, but I went down into the valley and still had some fog in it. And with these trees being so tall and so beautiful, these streams of light just started pouring down onto the road, and I use those as my leading line into the redwood forest. So anything could be your leading line. So look at leading lines and patterns. Here, because there's so many, they're coming in from all directions, but I did kind of purposely end up picking this one because I have a darker area in the middle with a little less of beams of light, so more of the beams are coming in from the side, so it's kind of wrapping around you instead of all of them, you know, coming directly at you. The same here, you have your leading line coming in from a corner, and that's sometimes the best way to think of it. Your leading line going out or coming in from a corner, not from a side or bottom or top center. It's a little nicer to have it coming in from a corner. And there's two things happening here. There's multiple leading lines coming in from the right, which is the pattern in here, and the leading line coming in from that bottom, leading you to the sun. The other thing to look at here, I'm going to go back to focal length. I shot this purposely at 24 millimeters for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to get as much as this dune in here, but not because it was a massive dune, but I wanted to make it look much bigger than it is. So I got down on my side, took the camera off the tripod and got down on my side, and I'm only about 10 or 12 inches from the sand down here in the bottom left-hand corner. And what did that do using that wide angle? That made that sand dune look much, much bigger. This sand dune's only about 6 feet high. It's not very big at all, but using that wider angle made it look like a much higher up and much bigger sand dune. So think about focal length that way when you want to exaggerate the scene, make it look more impressive. So compositional emphasis, where are you going to place that horizon line depending on the scene, the elements that you have in your image. Here, I had a nice set of clouds above the Grand Tetons, so I brought that horizon down, but not too much to make sure I didn't crop out that reflection of the Teton. So you've always heard, use that rule of thirds, bring that horizon line either down to a lower third or up to a top third. Not always going to happen with reflections, but you know, sometimes it works out. In this case, I was able to bring it down, so I was able to keep in some of those clouds in the sky. Here, now it's almost dead center. It's a little bit above it, but because of where I am, the elements in this image dictate where I'm going to put that horizon line. Like I said, sometimes you're not going to be able to move it from the center, because if I moved from the position I was in, I'm worrying about this reflection here. If I went lower, like went down a little bit in that hill to try and get that horizon up a little bit more, then I would have cut these bushes into it. If I moved to the right, I might have cut it. If I moved to the left, it may not have worked out well either. So considering where I was and the position I was in, I needed to just place that horizon line and not worry about it. So because it's all dictated about all the elements that are going on. I don't want to cut out too much of the clouds. I don't want the bushes cutting into my reflection either. So looking at all those little bits and elements kind of dictate where that horizon is going to be. Using other elements to work with the scene. This is on Mormon Road. So this is an interesting scene because you can get much closer to this barn and shoot at a wider angle. I'm shooting at 50 millimeters. You can shoot this at 24 millimeters, get close to the barn, but what's going to happen to the Tetons in the background? They're going to lose their size. You know, the closer you get to that barn, the bigger that barn's going to get, and it's going to overtake the mountains. And you can see here, I'm keeping that top edge of the roof within the edge of the mountains itself, which is important. So using that 50 millimeters, which has a little bit more compression to it, brings those mountains in the back closer to us, the photographer, allowing it to be bigger and still take over the barn itself. So looking at things that way, very important too. That's why focal length dictates composition sometimes here, looking at it and kind of using that compression. So giving the mountains their due, making them look as big as they possibly can, but not, you know, overwhelming, because I like the barn in it, but I just don't want the barn to be the main focus of it, especially when you have a beautiful sunrise like that hitting them. Color and tone. This is a fun thing to do, especially here in the Northeast. When we get to fall, we get those beautiful colors. So going to a stream where you have the sun coming either in from the side or behind you, even if it's casting a little bit of shadow over the rocks, you get this nice bluish tone to the rocks, which I like, because now we're talking about complementary colors. You got bluish tone to the rocks in there against this yellow and orange and green working really nice together. And yes, I have neutral density filters on here, even though I'm stopped down to 22 ISO 64. I want a slower shutter speed because this is the upper portion of the Hudson River, believe it or not, which isn't so wide and not so deep way up there in the Adirondacks. I needed to slow it down so I would get a softer reflection. So looking at colors and tones, even though you have that beautiful reflections of the orange and greens and reds and yellows from the fall foliage, because the way the sun's hitting them, that contradiction, that opposite color of that blue works, that colder color works really well with the rocks with it. Then there's color and tone in the sense of a scene. This is again Salar de Uyuni, the salt flats in Bolivia. Beautiful, beautiful location, but during the storms we got this weird bluish cast. You're also at I think about 12,000 feet there. So, and that's where altitude, doing your research on altitude is very important as well. If you tend to get, you know, a little bit more sensitive to altitude, bring some stuff with you. So do your research on that as well. But here, because of the altitude and because of the light and the scene and the weather coming in, the color just really wasn't there. It was okay, it's a nice scene. So like I said, it didn't prevent me to take pictures because I knew I was turning it to black and white. Got that distraction of color out of there. And that's where people like, color can be a distraction. Absolutely. You know, it can take away from you looking really at the details, because here the clouds just, you know there's some texture and detail in those clouds, but turning it to black and white, boom, they pop. You get this deep blacks and you get the textures in the background and in the sky and all that stuff. So taking out the color completely sometimes is the way to go. Absolutely. Light and dark relationships. This is out near Area 51, out in Nevada, out in the middle of nowhere. Don't ask me why I was there. We were doing a photo shoot late at night, and the storm came in just before sunset and created this really great light and dark relationship right at the opposite sides of the road, the highway here, that's just going straight down. So having that beautiful highlight of golden on one side and that dark, deep bluish and black on the right hand side working together create some conflict in that image. So movement, creating movement literally by slowing down that shutter speed. And it's funny that, you know, you think about slowing down. Yeah, you're slowing down the movement of your shutter to create movement in your scene. And here, this is a 4-second exposure that allowed me to get the foam going around those rocks, receding back into the ocean against that deep, rich black sand. So it creates that movement that draws you into the scene. And again, using the 15 millimeter here, because these ice formations, I'm going to say the one in the middle, this guy right here, is no bigger than that, and the other two are maybe double that size. So they're not gigantic pieces of ice, but using that wide angle makes them look much, much bigger than they are. Finally, after all this information, oh, look at that, not 5 minutes late. Don't think too much, just do it. You know, do your research, do the educational part of it all beforehand. Remind yourself, maybe make some notes down before you go. I highly recommend that. I take that one back for a second. make notes before you go and bring them with you. So you just have a reminder of, okay, when the sunrise is, what locations are good for sunrise, what locations are good for sunset. Have all that pre-planned so you don't have to think about it when you're there. And when it comes to all the technical stuff, don't get so wrapped up in it. This is the digital age. You can see it on the back of your camera if it's overexposed, underexposed, or whatever it may be. If there's too much movement in there, do I need to speed up my shutter speed? So don't think too much, do it. Have fun doing it as well. Don't lose that. I see so many people who just get so caught up in the technical that they look like they're losing the fun of photography. So have fun. And in this case, this is in Norway, and this is one of those moments of just do. We had really bad weather for 3 straight days. It took us 2.5 days just to get to this location because of the weather. And when we got there, it was really bad weather as well. So we decided to call it a night early, went to bed about 9:30. And at 11 o'clock, the fire alarm for the whole fishing village went off in every single cabin, and it woke us up. And Andre and I, we walk outside, we look up in the sky, and it's clear. And we go, well, we better grab our camera gear and run to the bridge and take a couple of pictures. And that's what we did. Literally 15 minutes later, after it rained, it hailed, it snowed, I walked away with 2 or 3 pictures. So don't think, just do sometimes. So just a quick review here. Do your research. Be prepared before you go. Know that location where you're going to. Know all the details. Like I said, go to Google Maps, do a satellite view so you can see what the terrain looks like if you have to go on a trail. The last thing you want to do is be surprised by a location, be surprised by sunsets, all that stuff. The more you do beforehand, the more enjoyment you're going to have while you're there. Filling your bag, bring the right equipment for the job. You know, yes, lighter is better today, but, you know, still bring the right stuff. Use your eyes, appreciate where you are before using your camera. Set up that scene, figure out what is it, visualize that scene you want to take in your head before even shooting that camera. Optics, use the right focal length. Wide angle compared to telephoto, what do they do? Why do they do it? What's going to make this image more impactful? Camera settings, use the right camera settings, but don't be afraid to experiment while you're out there. That's the key. You know, don't just take that one picture, try it. Maybe slow down that shutter speed and get some blur in those trees or whatever it might be. Look at the light, really pay attention to the light and the time of day, the color, all that stuff, because it really makes a big difference between the scene that you're trying to capture. Some scenes might be perfect after sunset in that blue hour. Like I said, don't leave too early. Use that time to create some good images as well. Construct your image. Look at the foreground elements, look at the background elements, look at everything in between. What works, what complements your main subject, and what doesn't. That's the key. Realize what that main subject is, and do the elements in that frame complement it or take it away from it. So construct your image. Do not think too much and just do. That's simple as that. Have fun as well. That's the key. Always have fun. Don't take it too seriously. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. This is what I do to eat. But I still try to have as much fun as possible. And when I start taking it too seriously, I put my camera down for a day and say, you know what? Don't take it so seriously. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for coming. If you want to follow me on social, I took a couple of months off away from it, but starting back in March 1st, I'll start doing more stuff again. So here's all my information for the social. If you have any questions directly for me later on, something pops up, you're going to a specific location and you want some hints or some places to go, I'll be more than happy to tell you exactly where I was, what time I was there, and what equipment I use. So.
Thank you, Ken. So I just want to kick off the Q&A with lots of feedback for your presentation. Great presentation. Some of them think it's the best in the series.
I paid them. So I just, yeah, I paid them.
Solid presentation. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Great, great, great. Joe finds you to be a very easy speaker to listen to.
It's that radio voice I have. No, I wish that Jeff Allen has a radio voice. He's the tech rep with the true voice. So.
Yes. So I definitely try to. What's that?
I can have my wine now too. It's been sitting there.
Okay. All right. Let's get some questions here. Let's do some quick basic questions. A lot of people are asking about your focus modes. Did you, unlike, let's say, for instance, the Milky Way shots or like the dock shots, and where was your focus point? Which focus modes
Right.
do you use?
I'll start with night skies. Night skies is purely manual focusing. And to focus on the night skies, what I usually do, and it depends on the camera system you're having, but most cameras are starting to get good enough to do it this way, is I turn on live view and I find the brightest star in the sky. And I zoom in with the LCD screen zoom, not the lens zoom, but the camera zoom for the LCD. You zoom into that bright star and you'll see it go from like a puffball, and as you turn that focus ring, it'll get nice and sharp to a point. So night skies, that's I found is the best way. If you have a camera that's a little bit older and there's a little too much gain using live view, that's where you see all that noise. What I tend to do is I put it down the middle infinity and you're gonna have to do like 3 or 4 different shots, moving it until you get it tack sharp. You take a picture, zoom in to preview it, and then, you know, make sure, and once you have that set for the stars, then just leave it there. As far as focus point goes for something like the dock images, is you got to account for depth of field being a 1/3, 2/3 ratio. That means from my focus point, 1/3 of depth of field, what's in focus, is in front, but 2/3 in back. So in that scene, I focused a little bit into the dock, so I knew I had the front of that dock in focus and the background as well. You can look at hyperfocal distance. Your phone and photo pills will help you with that as well. It'll tell you exactly, okay, focus 12 feet out. I'm not really good at math, and if my math teacher from high school is listening to me here, he's probably laughing very out loud, because I do not want to deal with math in the field. And hyperfocal distance, great way to do it. You know, probably the most precise way to do it because it's the math behind it. But with digital cameras now, what's good is you just focus a little bit into the scene, take the picture, preview the scene. If the background's a little too out of focus, then move the focus back a little. The foreground's a little too out of focus. As long as it's not within that minimum focus distance, then, you know, you can move that focus point a little bit forward. But yeah, just remember 1/3, 2/3 ratio there.
Got it. And let's see here. Let's go back up. If you see any, Armando, definitely jump in any time as I'm scrolling back up through the ones that I marked here. Okay. Oh, somebody wants to know, how do you get the sunburst?
The sunburst is stopping down that aperture, forcing the light of the sun, or say a lamp, a street lamp, whatever it is, whatever that light source is, by stopping down your aperture and making a very small opening, is forcing it through that tiny opening, and it bursts out. So if you're shooting at f2.8 at the sun, all you're going to get is a blob of the sun. And as you stop down smaller and smaller, you're going to see those sunbursts get bigger and bigger and bigger. So when you start getting to f11, 16, 22, you get those really long, nice sunbursts. The amount of bursts depends on the aperture blades you have in your lens. The more blades there are, the more burst lines you're going to have. So if you have a 7-blade aperture in a lens, you're going to get so many. But if you have a 9-blade, you're going to get more. So I think it's 2 bursts for every blade, Armando, something like that. I think.
Something like that.
Yeah, or yeah, some odd or even. There's an equation to it depending on it. But yeah, the more blades you have, the more bursts you get. Stopping down gets bigger. Yep.
There's a question about the software.
Okay.
Lightroom. Do you use Lightroom, or are your photos as natural as possible?
Every single image in this presentation was altered somehow. I try to do as little as possible, but some do take more than others, because if I'm in a really difficult lighting scene, I may purposely underexpose it or expose it a certain way that it comes out a little bit on the flat side. And the reasoning for that is so I can do what I visualized it looking like once I'm done. It gives me a little bit more latitude, if that makes sense. I don't always try to get it absolutely perfect in the field. I tend to underexpose, you know, a little bit, but depending on the scene. I do use Lightroom a little bit, mostly for organization and stuff like that, and some light editing. I've been using Photoshop for about 8 years, somewhere in that range. So I'm a Photoshop person just because of how long I've been using it, and it's kind of second nature. It's burned into my brain. So, but yeah, every image was processed somehow. I do try to keep it as natural as possible, but sometimes a little enhancements, a little more saturation, a little bit more contrast, you know, just makes the image better. And that's to your liking. I'm never a person that says it has to be 100% natural or you have to edit everything. It's your preference, but there are times adding a little saturation, a little bit of contrast or whatever to a scene just makes it look better. Yeah.
Do you photo stack any of the night photos?
No, the only time I photo stack is if I'm doing star trails, and I use star stacks for that. Again, yeah, Photoshop now, and not Lightroom, but Photoshop now, you can do it fairly easily, but I've been using star stacks for a number of years now, and the ease of use of it is really good. It allows you to take individual shots that look like, you know, 25 seconds, so you got the dotted, nice pinpointed stars, and you can take those, say, every 30 seconds for 4 or 5 hours, and then bring them all together and get those star trails that everybody likes as well, instead of keeping your shutter open for hours and hours. So,
Got it.
but outside of that, no.
And as far as metering, do you use a light meter or what's in the camera, and also like, you know, the matrix metering or spot centered? What are your preferences?
It depends on what I'm shooting. Wildlife, if I go to wildlife, I'm going to use more center weighted, because I want to make sure that I'm metering for the wildlife, especially in, you know, brighter, more contrasty situations. Spot metering, usually for landscapes, I'll spot meter. Matrix when I'm lazy, to be honest with you. When I'm walking around, I have, because Matrix 20 years ago, maybe not. Matrix today, you know, if I'm walking around and I'm on, say, the Grand Canyon, it can handle it pretty well. But when I'm really getting down to it, I'll spot meter on it. So.
Now going to your gear, like someone's asking, Henry, as what kind of pack do you use to carry around 25 pounds of gear? Do you hike with the pack?
Yeah, I do hike with a pack. Most people who've been around me can attest to that. Right now I have 2 packs. I have a Low Pro, which is my big pack. So when I have the big lenses in there, the 24 to 70, 70 to 200, 150 to 600, stuff like that, that one goes with me. That one will run 35 to 40 pounds. But my small pack, which I really, really love, is a Mind Shift. And the reason why, the one I have, if that person wants to email me, I can send the exact name of it. We fly, well, when we get back to traveling again, we fly a lot, and we're usually in some small planes. So the little CRJ 145s are the tiniest overheads I've ever seen. This particular Mind Shift will slide perfectly into it. And I can put 2 camera bodies, 4 or 5 lenses, a flash, batteries, everything in there. So
So I just typed in, I just said generally the big pack is low pro and the small bag is mind shift into the comments here. Hopefully everybody can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got that. Okay. Let's see. Any others
Any
you see?
recommendations on a travel tripod?
Travel tripod, carbon fiber, if you can, just for weight, and the smaller, the better in the sense, not too small. You want one that can get to eye level. The one mistake people make is they buy a good brand, but they buy a really small tripod because they're traveling. And when they go to set up, it gets to about 3 feet high, and they're not always the stablest when it comes to, say, if you're still shooting a DSLR with a 15 to 30 night skies, it gets a little iffy. Look for a little bigger one, but a 4-section leg. What the 4-section legs will reduce the length of it, and you can put it in your bag, your travel bag and stuff like that. But carbon fiber, definitely a nice lightweight one. Give yourself a good budget. Go to the top side of your budget and purchase that tripod. I won't say brands, there's so many brands out there. If people want to have a longer discussion with me, you can email me and I'll get a little bit deeper into it. But because there's so many brands, just buy a good one that will stand up to the travel, because you'll end up spending more replacing it or buying new ones. The one I have now, I've had 16 years. Carbon fiber hasn't been worked on once yet, and I am by no means easy on my equipment.
What's the best way to protect gear in snow, rain, heat, cold, etc.?
If you're going to be in a lot of rain, a good rain shield, shooting in rain, wildlife or landscape, invest in a good one, but always have something like the Optech rain sleeve in there. I think it's $10 for 2, and it basically looks like a baggie that goes over your camera and lens and kind of zip ties closed. It doesn't look that great, but it'll keep your equipment clear. If I'm in a scene, in a location where it's raining for days and everything's getting soaking wet, I'll even put my lenses and camera bodies in Ziploc bags and then put them into my camera bag, because as waterproof as some of these camera bags, with enough rain, it'll get through anyway. So, which leads me to, more importantly, humidity. Since I'm already in summer after the past year, I'm ready for summer, I'm ready for good weather, I'm ready to get outside again. Humidity can be one of the worst things possible when you're traveling, because you're going from, say, an air-conditioned hotel room or camper or something like that out into humidity. So what I tend to do is, again, take Ziploc bags, Ziploc my lenses and my camera body in that Ziploc bag, and then put it in my bag. I'll even go as far as putting my bag in the bathroom and closing the bathroom door when the air conditioner is on, so that that room stays at a different temperature than, because I like my air conditioning. I like it cold. So, because anytime things get too cold and you go out in that humidity, it'll be hours before you'll be able to use that equipment again. So that's a bigger thing,
And other basic questions. I don't know, did you mention anything about neutral density filters?
I did. Neutral density filters, very, very important, especially because you want to slow down that shutter speed to get your waterfalls nice and smooth. A good set of neutral density filters, you can get the screw-on ones that are either in steps, two stops of light, 4 stops of light, 6 stops of light, or you can get the screw-on ones that are variable. And what that does is, when you screw it on, it works like a circular polarizer, forgetting my filters here, and as you turn it, it becomes more or less dense. So it'll start at 2, then 3, then 4 stops of light reduction. When you go too far, you'll actually see an X, like a shadowy X through it. That means you went too far in turning it. But For those who are just beginning using them, I recommend a variable. That's the best bet. So easiest to use.
Gotcha. Let's see. Well, we're about to half hour past the hour, so we're going to wrap it up. Last question I'm going to give to you is, if someone wants to know, do you have a website? And if not, why not?
I do have a website, kenhubbardphotography.com.
kenhubbardphotography.com.
Yeah.
Well, thank
I
you,
think you can,
everybody. Oops.
you can also type in kenhubbardphoto.com. Both of them will go to it. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining this evening. And a lot of people are bummed. They're like, they don't know what they're going to do next week now. So
Uh-oh, the pressure is on. We just need a couple of weeks to regroup, get our
yeah,
stuff back together, and create some new content. So, and
yes.
there might be, hopefully by fall, something bigger in the work. So
Oh
we'll
boy.
see. I just made everybody's day. Maybe. We're seeing. We're trying. So.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if we don't see you before the fall, enjoy your summer. Stay safe, be well. And as always, this is being recorded. You will get an email, a follow-up email with the link. And for those of you that are asking, double check your spam folders, your junk folders. I know some of you are not getting it. We don't get it either sometimes, so we check our junk folders. But if not, email Ken.
Sure. Email me. Well, even if you email through the GoToWebinar, you know, when you get the reminder and stuff like that, it comes to me anyway. So.
Yep. That's who it goes to. So thanks, Orlando, for helping me with all the questions in the background. Ken, thank you.
Thank you
Boss
too.
man.
Thanks for all the help. So see you guys soon.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.